Allow me to clarify the situation, Congresswoman. You informed the Somali Prime Minister, and I am holding the official transcript at this very moment, that you intended to utilize every resource at your disposal to obstruct United States sanctions against Somali representatives. Is that a precise reflection of your words? The voice of President Donald Trump resonated through the expanse of the Oval Office, not with a roar or a shout, but with a chillingly direct, New York-style bluntness that sliced through pretense like a sharpened blade through parchment. He was positioned firmly behind the historic resolute desk, reclining slightly within the leather of his chair while clutching a document adorned with crimson top-secret classifications across its header. Silence followed, not the reflective silence of a person weighing a difficult choice, but the heavy, stagnant silence of an individual who has sustained a sudden, paralyzing blow to the solar plexus and finds themselves momentarily unable to draw breath. It was the crushing stillness of someone realizing in a flash of terrifying clarity that they have been completely and undeniably compromised. Ilhan Omar was seated across from him, occupied by one of the chairs typically reserved for visiting heads of state or high-ranking cabinet officials. She had been confined to the Oval Office for 3/4 of an hour already. What had commenced as what she assumed would be a mundane, albeit tense, meeting expecting Trump to simply berate her regarding her public opposition to his administrative policies had devolved into an entirely different ordeal, a high-stakes interrogation. John Ratcliffe, serving as the Director of National Intelligence, remained positioned against the wall to the president's left, cradling 3 voluminous dossiers. His silence was notable, as he had barely uttered a word. Yet his very presence signaled to Omar that the gravity of the situation was absolute. "I have no recollection of that particular exchange," Omar replied, her tone shifting into a defensive and wavering register as the arrogance she had arrived with 45 minutes prior had entirely evaporated. Trump offered a smile, though it lacked any semblance of warmth, resembling instead the expression of a predator that had meticulously laid a snare and was now relishing the moment the mechanism snapped shut. "You find yourself unable to remember? Allow me to facilitate your recollection," he stated, before depressing a toggle on a specialized communication device situated on his desk. For a fleeting second, the room returned to silence, until high-fidelity audio began to emanate from the discrete speakers integrated into the architecture of the Oval Office walls. The sound was remarkably crisp, possessing that professional crystalline quality that is exclusive to the high-end recording technology utilized by elite intelligence agencies. Omar's own voice filled the chamber. "Mr. Prime Minister, I shall exert every ounce of my influence to stymie these sanctions. The United States fails to perceive the nuances of Somalia in the way that we do. I intend to collaborate with our confederates within the halls of Congress to halt this progression. You have my solemn promise." A male voice, marked by a distinct accent and speaking English with the melodic inflections of a Somali native, replied, "Congresswoman, we remain profoundly appreciative of your steadfast advocacy. Your logistical and political assistance has proven indispensable to our administration." Omar's voice returned. "I am merely pursuing the path of righteousness, doing what is necessary for our people." The playback ceased, and the ensuing quiet was so profound it felt oppressive. One could discern the rhythmic ticking of the heirloom clock atop the marble mantel, the faint, distant bustle of the West Wing continuing its operations beyond the heavy doors, and the increasingly shallow, rapid cadence of Ilhan Omar's respiration. The physical manifestations of her panic were unmistakable. The pallor of her skin as the color receded from her face, and the desperate, white-knuckled grip she maintained on the mahogany arms of her chair. The realization struck her with the devastating force of a high-speed locomotive. That is my own voice. That is a clandestine recording. The President of the United States possesses audio evidence of me collaborating with a foreign sovereignty to undermine American foreign policy. Trump shifted his weight forward, planting his elbows firmly on the polished surface of the desk. You utilized the term "we," suggesting that the United States lacks the understanding of Somalia that we possess. To whom does "we" refer in this context, Congresswoman? Does it imply you and the Somali Prime Minister? Because, to any objective listener, it sounds remarkably as though you have aligned yourself with his interests rather than the interests of the American people. Omar parted her lips as if to speak, then hesitated before uttering, "That statement has been stripped of its proper context." Trump gave a slow, deliberate nod. Context? Very well. I am in possession of 43 additional recordings of an identical nature. Would you prefer I play each one in succession? We have the capacity to remain here throughout the day. My schedule is open. Is yours? He rose from his seat and paced around the perimeter of the desk, clad in his customary attire, a sharp, dark suit, a crisp white shirt, and a vibrant red tie, the quintessential presidential uniform. He moved with the fluid ease of a man who was entirely at home within his own sphere of influence, utterly certain of his standing. He extended a document toward Omar, which she accepted with visibly trembling hands. It bore the top secret, no foreign designation stamped in bold red ink. The no foreign caveat indicated that the material was so sensitive that no foreign national, including those from our closest allied nations, was permitted to view it. This represents a classified intelligence assessment produced by the community, Trump remarked, towering over her now and casting a shadow as he looked down. It documents that you have engaged in 127 separate communications with Somali governmental figures over the preceding 24 months. 127 interactions, encompassing telephone calls, private face-to-face gatherings, and messages sent via encrypted platforms. Following 89 of those specific exchanges, you proceeded to cast legislative votes or issue public declarations that served the direct interests of the Somali government while standing in direct opposition to the established policies of the United States. He paused, allowing the weight of that statistic to settle heavily in the air. In the private sector, we identify such a sequence as a clear pattern. In the realm of national security, the intelligence community identifies it as foreign agent activity. As for my own assessment, his voice dropped to a lower, more menacing frequency. I call it treason. Omar stood up with a sudden, jerky motion, the legs of her chair screeching harshly against the floor. I am under no obligation to remain here and endure. Remain seated, Congresswoman. Trump's voice was not raised, for it required no volume. The inherent authority it carried was absolute. It was the voice of a man who had constructed a global real estate empire, commanded the ratings of the nation's premier television program, and secured the presidency against every conceivable obstacle and expert prediction. It was the tone of a leader accustomed to immediate compliance. You are currently within the Oval Office. I am the Commander-in-Chief of the United States, and I hold in my possession classified intelligence, intercepted audio, and financial ledgers, proving your coordination with a foreign entity against the welfare of this nation. Therefore, you most certainly will remain seated, and you will listen. Omar complied and returned to her seat. She was trapped within the most powerful room in the world. The president held incriminating recordings, and the director of national intelligence stood as a silent sentinel with even more damning evidence. She was utterly cornered. Trump traversed the space back to his desk and resumed his seat. Now, you are faced with two distinct paths. Option 1. You provide a comprehensive confession. You disclose every detail of your actions. Identify every individual with whom you have conspired, and explain why you prioritized Somalia's objectives over those of the United States. You offer your total and unreserved cooperation. He lifted a secondary document from the desk's surface. Option 2. I depart from this room immediately, proceed to the briefing area, and convene an emergency press conference. I will broadcast these recordings to the global public. I will release these classified documents. I have FBI personnel stationed within the West Wing, prepared to take you into custody the moment I provide the signal. You would then face the prospect of spending the remainder of your natural life in a federal penitentiary on charges of espionage, violations of the foreign agent statutes, and treason. He peered at her over the edge of the paper. The decision is yours, but you must reach it instantaneously, as my tolerance has reached its limit. Ilhan Omar stared back at him, at the individual wielding the most significant power on the planet, a man who had just demonstrated with ruthless precision that he held the evidence required to destroy her. She looked at the man who had just made it clear that her political career was effectively over, that her personal liberty was in immediate jeopardy, and that the entire life she had constructed was on the precipice of a total collapse. She realized, with a sinking heart, that she possessed no remaining leverage. To comprehend the sequence of events that led to this moment, how a woman celebrated as a refugee success story found herself the subject of a treason inquiry within the Oval Office, one must revert to a time exactly 3 hours earlier when Ilhan Omar received a communication that would irrevocably alter the course of her life. It was a Tuesday morning, the 28th of January, 2026. Within Ilhan Omar's congressional suite in the Cannon House office building, the atmosphere seemed ordinary. She had been back from the winter adjournment for a fortnight, and her agenda was typical: committee deliberations, calls with her constituents, and various media engagements. She was currently occupied with preparations for an upcoming CNN appearance later that week to discuss immigration reform. Her chief of staff, Marcus, entered after a brief knock, his expression a mixture of bewilderment and concern. "Congresswoman, I have just received a call from the White House." Omar looked up from her briefing materials, her curiosity piqued. "The White House? What is the nature of their inquiry?" "The President has requested a meeting with you today at 2 p.m. Omar's face transitioned from confusion to a deep-seated suspicion. "Trump desires an audience with me? For what purpose?" Marcus shook his head in the negative. They provided no specifics, only that it was not a suggestion. "They informed me that a vehicle would arrive to collect you at 1:30 and that the President expects your arrival by 2. Am I permitted to decline?" In a technical sense, perhaps, however, refusing a direct summons from the President, Marcus's voice trailed off, as they both understood the negative optics such a refusal would generate. Omar's communications director, Jen, entered the conversation. "This almost certainly pertains to the Somalia controversy, the recent ProPublica report. He likely intends to reprimand you for your vocal criticism of his international agenda." Omar leaned back, considering. She had weathered far more significant storms than a lecture from Donald Trump. She had been characterized as a threat by her colleagues, faced accusations of prejudice, and been the subject of campaign finance inquiries. She had habitually converted every political assault into a source of momentum, using it to drive fundraising and increase her national profile. "Very well," she remarked. "I shall attend. Let him vent his frustrations. It will likely provide material for a viral social media post and perhaps generate a significant surge in donations by the end of the day." Her staff offered a nervous laugh, yet they proceeded to draft defensive talking points, nonetheless rebuttals concerning her advocacy for Somalia and responses to potential criticisms. It was standard political maneuvering. What none of them could have anticipated was that this was not a political discussion. It was a targeted intelligence debriefing, where Ilhan Omar was the primary subject. That very morning, 3 hours before the scheduled meeting, the Oval Office had been occupied by the most influential figures of Trump's national security apparatus. John Ratcliffe had been the first to arrive, bringing with him several large containers overflowing with a mountain of evidence: transcripts, audio files, financial records, and detailed intelligence summaries. This was the culmination of a rigorous 6-month investigation into the activities of Ilhan Omar. Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, sat in one of the chairs facing the desk, while Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, occupied the other. Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff, and a key advisor on immigration, stood near the fireplace. Trump was immersed in a summary Ratcliffe had meticulously compiled. Every few moments, he would shake his head in disbelief or mutter under his breath, "Incredible. Can you grasp the magnitude of this? She is actively working on their behalf." After 10 minutes of focused reading, he looked up at his team. "Very well. Provide me with a comprehensive walkthrough. Let's start at the very beginning." Ratcliffe, drawing upon his experience as a former congressman and federal prosecutor, stepped forward to present the findings. "Mr. President, this inquiry originated 6 months ago. The NSA routinely monitors the communications of the Somali government as part of our broader counterterrorism and regional stability initiatives. Standard operating procedure." He produced a specific transcript. "However, we began to notice recurring references to a member of the American Congress who was described as exceptionally cooperative and working in close coordination with Somali officials. These initial mentions were sufficiently ambiguous that we couldn't confirm the identity immediately. But then, we obtained this." He handed a transcript to the president. "This is a record of a call between the Somali foreign minister and their ambassador to the United States. They are discussing upcoming House votes regarding foreign aid conditions, and the minister states, 'I am reading from the intercept. The sister will assist us. She always does.'" Trump looked up from the page. "The sister? Is that their designation for her? The sister?" We cross-referenced that moniker with congressional voting records and travel schedules. Only a single member of Congress aligned with that profile: Ilhan Omar. Ratcliffe presented further documentation. "Consequently, we petitioned the FISA court and obtained a legal warrant to monitor her communications with foreign dignitaries. What we uncovered—" He trailed off, his head shaking in disappointment. "What we uncovered is that she is effectively functioning as an undeclared foreign agent. We have documented 127 communications with Somali officials over 2 years. We have high-quality recordings or transcripts of 43 of them. Throughout these exchanges, she deliberates on policy, provides intelligence on upcoming legislative votes, aligns her public rhetoric with their specific talking points, and in several instances appears to relay information that could have only been acquired through classified briefings." Trump leaned back, his expression grim. "She is conducting espionage for them. The situation is more nuanced than traditional spycraft," Pam Bondi interjected. "She isn't physically stealing documents or using dead drops, but she is relaying strategic policy insights, the timing of critical votes, and internal assessments. This provides the Somali government with advanced warning, allowing them to formulate counter-strategies. It is, for all intents and purposes, espionage adjacent." "What about the FARA statutes?" Trump inquired. "The Foreign Agents Registration Act mandated that anyone acting as a lobbyist for a foreign power must register. She failed to register, correct?" "That is correct," Bondi confirmed. "She was legally required to register years ago. Failure to do so is a felony carrying a 5-year sentence per count." We can substantiate at least a dozen instances where she acted on behalf of Somalia without the required legal disclosure. Mike Waltz added his perspective. Consider the voting records. Every single vote pertaining to Somalia, 12 in total over the last 2 years, she has voted in direct opposition to U.S. strategic interests and in total alignment with the Somali government's desires. Every single one. He displayed a chart. And here is the most damning evidence. Each of those 12 votes occurred within a 14-day window following her meetings with Somali officials. The correlation is flawless. She meets with them, they dictate their preferences, and she executes her vote accordingly. Trump examined the data. So, she is essentially following the directives of a foreign power? Effectively, yes, sir, Waltz replied. Stephen Miller added another layer. We also have the financial trail. Her campaign has received over $1.2 million from entities with direct connections to the Somali administration. Furthermore, her husband's consulting firm has been paid $340,000 by Somali business interests. She is being financially compensated by them. Trump surveyed his advisors. So we have the grounds to prosecute? We can move forward with charges? Yes, we can, Bondi affirmed. The evidence is substantial. FARA violations, espionage statutes, and potentially treason, depending on the prosecutorial strategy. However, Trump detected the hesitation. Prosecuting a sitting member of Congress is a massive political undertaking, particularly given her profile. The media will frame it as a targeted persecution. Her allies will call it authoritarianism. It will become a media circus. Trump offered a slight smile. I have no aversion to a circus, but I want her removed completely. I don't just want a trial. I want a confession. I want her to resign in total disgrace, removed from Congress and public life forever. Is that objective achievable? Stephen Miller smiled back. If we execute this strategy correctly, yes, sir. For the following hour, they meticulously choreographed the upcoming encounter. The plan was as simple as it was devastating. Invite Omar to the Oval Office under the guise of a standard meeting. Allow her to remain unaware of the evidence they held. Let her attempt to deny the allegations. Then, systematically dismantle her defenses by presenting the evidence piece by piece, recording after recording, document after document. Box her in until there is no escape. Then, present the ultimatum: a quiet resignation to avoid prison, or a public battle she cannot win. She will likely believe she can survive this politically, Miller noted. She has survived previous scandals. But once she hears her own voice on those tapes, she will realize the rules have changed. Trump nodded in agreement. And we are recording this entire encounter? Everything in the Oval Office is recorded for the presidential record, Ratcliffe confirmed. It is entirely legal, and she will be notified. Good, because when this concludes, I want the world to see the expression on her face when she realizes she's been caught. I want the public to see a congresswoman caught in the act of serving a foreign power. At 1:30 p.m., a black armored SUV arrived at the House side of the Capitol. 2 Secret Service agents exited. One entered the Cannon Building, located Omar's office, and informed her staff that the transport was ready. Omar emerged from her office, dressed in a navy blue suit with an American flag pin on her lapel. Her hijab, a striking red and white pattern. She appeared poised and confident, fully expecting a political skirmish where Trump would bluster, and she would stand as a pillar of the progressive movement. She had no inkling of the truth. The drive to the White House lasted 12 minutes. In the back of the vehicle, Omar was preoccupied with her smartphone, refining potential social media posts. Her team had already prepared several drafts. Just concluded a meeting with President Trump, reminded him that dissent is not unpatriotic, but a constitutional obligation, or the President cannot intimidate me into silence. I will continue to advocate for what is just. She was still focused on her digital strategy when the SUV reached the West Wing entrance. An agent opened the door. "This way, Congresswoman." She was led through the corridors of power. Noticing that staffers seemed to pause and observe her as she passed, she assumed their gaze was due to her political standing. In reality, they were watching because they were aware of the impending fallout. Outside the Oval Office, the President's secretary looked up from her work. "The President is ready to see you now, Congresswoman." The heavy doors opened, and Omar stepped inside. The room was exactly as depicted in countless historical photographs. The majestic presidential seal woven into the rug, the resolute desk with its storied history, the classic artwork, the flags, and the view of the Rose Garden. The air felt thick with the weight of historical consequence. Trump stood up from his desk as she approached. "Congresswoman Omar, I appreciate your attendance." He walked around the desk and offered his hand. She was taken aback by his apparent politeness, having expected a more hostile reception. Instead, he was almost welcoming. "Please, take a seat. Can I offer you a beverage? Water? Coffee?" "No. Thank you, Mr. President." She sat down. It was then that Omar noticed John Ratcliffe standing quietly against the wall, clutching his folders. The presence of the DNI at a routine political meeting was a glaring anomaly. Something was profoundly wrong. Trump returned to his seat and laced his fingers together. "I wished to discuss the situation in Somalia. You have been a very vocal critic of our regional strategy, quite disapproving of my administration's choices." Omar maintained a steady tone. "I believe in the necessity of speaking truth to power, Mr. President. When I observe policies that inflict harm upon people, particularly in communities I am connected to, correct, but I find myself curious. You seem to possess a singular focus on Somalia, perhaps more so than any other international issue. Why is that? I represent a significant Somali-American constituency." "Certainly, but your focus seems to transcend local representation. You've sponsored 3 major bills specifically for Somalia. You've delivered dozens of speeches. You are in constant contact with their officials. It appears that Somalia is your primary concern. Why?" Omar felt a flicker of genuine anxiety. How was he so aware of the frequency of her meetings? "I possess unique expertise on the region, having been born there." "Right, born there. Arrived as a refugee, a classic American narrative." Trump smiled thinly. "But here is my confusion. When you attained your citizenship, and you are a citizen, correct? Of course. When you took that oath, you formally renounced all allegiance to Somalia. You pledged your loyalty exclusively to the United States. Yet, it seems you've never truly moved on from Somalia. It appears to remain your top priority. Is that an accurate assessment? That is a complete mischaracterization. Is it?" Trump opened a folder on his desk. "Let me ask something very specific. When you meet with the Somali ambassador, and you have met with him 23 times in the last 2 years, I verified the count. What is the nature of your discussions?" Omar's heart rate spiked. How could he possibly know the exact number of meetings? Such precision meant she had been under constant surveillance. General diplomatic matters? General diplomatic matters? I see. Trump nodded slowly. And when you meet with him the very day after you've received a classified briefing on Somalia, are those conversations still general? The room seemed to shift on its axis. He knew about the briefings. He knew about the timing. Omar's voice was noticeably quieter when she spoke. "I do not disclose classified information. I didn't ask if you disclosed it. I asked what you talked about immediately after receiving it. There is a distinction." Trump stood up. "Allow me to show you something." He signaled to Ratcliffe, who handed him a blue folder. Trump opened it and withdrew a transcript. These are NSA intercepts. We monitor Somali communications for counterterrorism purposes, but your name surfaced repeatedly. The sister is assisting us. The sister will coordinate with us. The sister is an invaluable asset. They refer to you as the sister. Were you aware of that? Omar's throat felt parched. I was not. So, we obtained a FISA warrant completely legal, sanctioned by a federal judge. We have been listening to your calls with Somali officials, monitoring your private meetings, and reading your encrypted messages. He produced another document, 127 communications in 2 years. That exceeds the activity of many State Department officials whose primary job is Somalia policy. Why is a representative from Minnesota more engaged with a foreign government than our own diplomats? I have constituents who require assistance with consular problems. Consular issues? Right. Trump smiled. Let's listen to one of these calls and see if it sounds like you're helping someone with a passport. He pressed the button. Omar's voice filled the room. Minister, the sanctions legislation is scheduled for a vote next week. I am coordinating with other members to block it. We have a dozen firm no votes and 20 more who are leaning that way. I believe we can successfully remove the provisions targeting your officials. But you must understand that this is politically precarious for me. The Republicans are scrutinizing my every move, searching for any pretext to attack. The Somali foreign minister's voice replied, Congresswoman, we value your efforts more than words can express. Your assistance is vital to our government. We view you as a true ally of Somalia. Omar's voice, I am only doing what is right for our people. The recording ended. Trump let the ensuing silence stretch out. Our people. You used that phrase with a foreign minister. Not your people, not the Somali people, but our people. As if you and he are on the same team. To which people are you referring, Congresswoman? Americans or Somalis? Omar's face was ghostly pale. That is being taken out of context. I have the entire 15-minute recording. Do you wish to hear it all? Because it becomes much more explicit. You discuss coordinating votes, you discuss the timing of your public statements to match their messaging, and you promise to use your power to help them. That isn't constituent service. That is collusion with a foreign power. He pulled another transcript. Here is one from October. You are speaking to the ambassador. You say, and I am quoting you exactly, I attended a classified briefing yesterday regarding regional security. I cannot disclose specifics, but I can tell you the U.S. is planning to expand drone operations in the southern provinces. Your government should prepare a public response. Trump looked up, his eyes hard. You relayed information derived from a classified briefing to a foreign government? That is espionage, Congresswoman. That is a violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 798, which carries a 10-year federal sentence. I never revealed actual secrets. You revealed policy direction and operational timelines based on secret intelligence. You provided a foreign government with advanced warning of U.S. military movements. American lives were jeopardized because of your words. Trump walked to an easel covered by a cloth, which he removed to reveal a large chart. This is your voting record on Somalia. 12 votes in 2 years. Sanctions, aid, oversight, human rights. 12 votes. He pointed to the data. You voted against American interests and in favor of Somalia every single time, 100%. Perhaps that's just your philosophy. Perhaps you truly believe sanctions are ineffective and oversight is wrong. Fine. He overlaid a second chart. But look at this. Every single one of those 12 votes occurred within 2 weeks of your meetings with Somali officials. Look at the dates. The correlation was impossible to ignore. Meeting on March 3rd, vote on March 12th. Meeting on June 15th, vote on June 24th. Again and again. You meet, they tell you what they want, and you vote accordingly. That isn't representation. That's taking orders. He then produced FEC reports. And then there is the money. Your campaign has received $1, $2 million from groups with direct financial ties to the Somali government. The Somali American Leadership Council sounds benign, but it is funded by interests close to their administration. You took their funds, and then you voted as they requested. Omar tried to interject. Those donations were legal only if properly disclosed. You concealed the foreign connections. You reported them as domestic contributions. That is campaign finance fraud. Trump sat on the edge of his desk, looming over her. Your husband's firm, the E Street Group, received $340,000 from Somali business interests last year. That is triple their previous revenue. What services did they provide to justify that sum? My husband's business is entirely separate from mine. You share a residence. You file joint tax returns. His income is your income, and he was paid hundreds of thousands by people linked to a foreign government right as you began coordinating with that government. You don't see the conflict? Trump's tone became even more grave. Here is the part that truly angers me. You serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee. You receive briefings on terrorism, military raids, and intelligence sources' secrets that could get people killed if leaked. He produced a document with top-secret markings. This is a damage assessment. After we discovered your communications, we had to assess the harm. It states, Representative Omar attended 17 classified briefings regarding Somalia or al-Shabaab. Within 48 hours of each, she communicated with Somali officials. While we have no evidence of verbatim leaks, she consistently shared policy directions and timelines that could only have come from those briefings. Trump looked up. You attended briefings on operations against al-Shabaab, a designated terrorist group, and then you warned a government with documented ties to those very terrorists. You gave them time to prepare. You gave them time to warn the targets. I never. We lost 2 soldiers in Somalia in November, Trump said, his voice cold. November 8th, a Navy SEAL team was ambushed during a raid. The terrorists were waiting for them. 2 Americans killed, 3 wounded. He produced more papers. You attended a briefing on that operation on November 2nd, 6 days before the raid. On November 4th, you called the Somali foreign minister for 28 minutes. On November 8th, our soldiers walked into a trap. Omar shook her head. You cannot possibly believe I think the timing is undeniable. I think you had information. I think you spoke to people with connections to terrorists. And I think 4 days later, the enemy knew exactly where we would be. He leaned in. Can I prove you are solely responsible? No. There are multiple sources. But you were reckless. And 2 soldiers are dead. Their families are shattered because you couldn't stay silent. Trump returned to his desk and pulled out a final, thicker folder. Let's discuss your history, the refugee story you tell. Grateful for America, the American dream. It's a compelling narrative. He opened the folder. But there are inconsistencies. In 2009, you married Ahmed Noor Said Elmay, a British citizen. You filed joint taxes, listed him as your spouse on federal forms, and helped him obtain immigration benefits. He spread documents across the desk: marriage certificate, tax returns, green card application. But here is the issue. Ahmed Elma is your brother, your biological brother. That is a debunked conspiracy theory. It's a DNA match. Trump produced a lab report. The FBI obtained DNA samples legally. The analysis shows a 99.9% probability that you and Ahmed Elmey share both parents. You married your own brother to commit immigration fraud. He produced even more evidence. Birth records from Somalia, school records showing you in the same household, witness statements from Mogadishu. We even have photos of you two as children before the war. Your family's immigration paperwork shows his name was crossed out to hide the relation. You can't hide from this. The FBI has been building this case for 8 months. Marriage fraud, immigration fraud, tax fraud. Each one is a felony. Trump stacked the documents neatly and walked to the window, looking out with his hands behind his back. So, here is the summary. 43 recordings of foreign coordination, evidence of leaking classified policy, a 100% voting record for a foreign power, $1.5 million in questionable funds, and DNA evidence of major fraud. Any one of these would be enough. Together, you are looking at 30 to 40 years in federal prison. You'll be 70 years old before you see the sun as a free woman. Your children will grow up without you. He sat back down. But I am going to offer you a choice. Contrary to my public image, I can be quite generous. He slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. Option 1. You sign this resignation letter immediately. You admit to serious errors in judgment. You apologize to the nation. You resign your seat, and you vanish from the public eye. No media, no books, no social media. You go away quietly. He paused. If you do that, the recordings stay classified. The evidence is sealed. You keep your freedom, and your kids keep their mother. We are finished. He leaned forward. Option 2. You refuse. You think you can fight. Tomorrow, I hold a press conference. I play the tapes. I release the DNA. I have the FBI arrest you on live television. You go to trial. The world hears everything. And you spend the rest of your life in a cell. Trump held out a pen. What is your decision? Ilhan Omar stared at the pen, then at the letter, and finally at the president, who held all the cards. She stood up, her legs weak. You cannot do this. This is blackmail. It is not blackmail, Trump said calmly. It is a choice. Face the legal consequences of your crimes or resign with a shred of dignity. That is mercy, not blackmail. I will fight this. I will tell everyone you are targeting me for my faith. Trump smiled. Do it. I'll release the tapes of you coordinating against America. I'll show the world you warned a foreign power about military raids where Americans died. You think the public will care about your religion then? You think they'll feel sympathy for a traitor? He pressed a button, and a screen descended. He played security footage of Omar entering the Somali embassy the day after a classified briefing. We have 23 videos like this. The pattern is undeniable. Do you want me to show them all? Omar sat back down, defeated. What do you want from me? The truth. I want you to say it. There was a long silence. Somalia is my homeland, she said softly. I was born there. When I see the U.S. using drones and sanctions, I feel it personally. Go on. I thought I could be a bridge. I thought I could help Somalia while serving America. But you couldn't, Trump said. When there was a conflict, you chose Somalia every time, didn't you? She didn't deny it. Say it. Say you prioritized Somalia over the United States. Her voice was a whisper. I tried to help my people. Which people? Americans or Somalis? Tears began to fall. I wanted to help both. But when you had to choose, you chose Somalia. Say it. After the longest pause of her life, she whispered, Yes, I chose Somalia. Trump pressed a button. That's all I needed. That confession on tape? You've just admitted to prioritizing a foreign power over your own country while serving in Congress. He handed her the letter. Sign it. Omar's hands shook so violently she could barely grip the pen. "If I sign this, what happens to me?" "You hold a brief press conference today. You read the statement we prepared. You say you are resigning for personal reasons, apologize for errors in judgment, and then you disappear. No interviews, no books. You stay away. And if I don't? Tomorrow, I play the tapes for the world. I play your confession. I release the fraud evidence. By tomorrow afternoon, you are in handcuffs. By next week, you are indicted. By next year, you are in a cell." He leaned back. "Decide." Ilhan Omar picked up the pen and signed the letter, tears streaming down her face. "You've destroyed me," she whispered. "No," Trump said firmly. "You destroyed yourself when you chose to work for a foreign power while wearing that pin. I simply brought it to light." He took the signed letter and smiled. "Good choice." He pressed a button, and Pam Bondi entered with 2 agents. "Attorney General Bondi will escort you. The reporters are waiting. Read the statement word for word. No deviations." He stood up and offered a final hand, which she ignored. "One more thing. You'll sign an NDA. You will never discuss this meeting or these documents, ever. If you do, the agreement is void and we prosecute. Understood?" She nodded. "Now, go read your statement and disappear." 30 minutes later, Omar stood at the White House podium. The press corps was in shock. She had no prior presence at the White House that day. Her voice trembled as she read, "I am announcing my resignation from Congress, effective immediately. After reflection, I have decided to step down. I have made serious errors in judgment regarding my communications with foreign officials. I apologize to my constituents and the American people. I will not be taking questions." She walked away as reporters began shouting. She left the building and entered a waiting car. She was gone. An hour later, Trump held his own briefing. "Good afternoon. As you heard, Congresswoman Omar has resigned. I accepted it. She admitted to serious errors in her coordination with foreign officials. Out of respect for her family, I will not release the specifics." Reporters pressed for more. What did she admit? Errors in judgment regarding foreign coordination? That is all I will say. The rest is classified. Will she be prosecuted? That is up to the Justice Department. I've asked General Bondi to review the evidence. But the important thing is that someone putting a foreign government first is no longer in our Congress. Was this forced? Trump smiled. I showed her the evidence. She made a choice. She chose to resign rather than face the consequences. A smart choice. He concluded the briefing. No member of Congress, regardless of party or background, can prioritize a foreign power over the United States. That is not a partisan issue. It is an American one, and I won't tolerate it. The reaction was a political earthquake. Democrats were in chaos. Republicans were triumphant. Speculation was rampant. But the tapes remained sealed. By that evening, a special election was announced for her seat. Her office was cleared out, her staff resigned, and her social media went silent. She simply vanished. The squad issued a statement of shock and a demand for transparency. But without details, they had no ground to stand on. A week later, Trump addressed Congress for the State of the Union. Near the end, he went off script. Last week, a member of Congress resigned because she forgot where her loyalties should lie. When you take that oath, you pledge allegiance to one country, the United States of America. He looked directly at the remaining squad members. Let this be a lesson. You serve America only. If you cannot put America first, then there is the door, and I will help you find it. The Republican side erupted in applause, while Democrats sat in silence. 3 months later, reporters were still trying to find the truth, but the NDAs and classifications held firm. The only certainty was that Ilhan Omar had entered the Oval Office, a powerful congresswoman, and left it a disgraced private citizen. Rumors placed her in Somalia, Canada, or Europe under a new identity. Her lawyer released a final request for privacy. Her last tweet simply said, "I am grateful for the opportunity to have served. I am sorry for my mistakes. I am stepping away. Thank you." Then, total silence. The hidden truth was the agreement she signed, her silence in exchange for her freedom. She had been effectively erased from public life. She had brought this upon herself by believing she was untouchable, too historic, and too protected to ever face a reckoning. Donald Trump had proven her wrong in the most absolute way. 6 months later, a former staffer spoke off the record. She thought being a Muslim woman of color meant she was immune to criticism, that everything was just racism. She was surrounded by people who told her she was a brave icon. No one told her she was wrong to coordinate with a foreign government. No one told her it was treason. The staffer paused. Trump told her, and she learned the hard way, that history doesn't protect you if you are a traitor. The lesson was brutal. Regardless of your story or your status, if you serve a foreign power over your own, eventually you will be caught. And if the President of the United States is the one who catches you, your career won't just end, it will be completely erased.